Do you withdraw or shut down connection and conflict? Do you ignore, act uninterested, unfazed when someone tries to comfort, soothe, validate, or even compliment you? You might even find it difficult to acknowledge to yourself and to others that you want connection. Do you withdraw from intimacy, vulnerability, and conflict? These are all common with the avoidant and dismissive attachment style. You probably appear calm and not distressed to those on the outside looking in, but actually have physiological signs of distress, something called the galvanic skin response or very microscopic sweat response, and maybe even a rapid heart rate. This is likely because you've had experiences that have shown you that connection and conflict are both risky. You've internalized that both connection and conflict are threatening. You might go into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, which allows you to avoid what feels distressing, which is basically emotional connection or conflict engagement. So this is why avoidant attachment is also considered an anxious attachment style, not to be confused with anxious reactive, which I talked about in last week's video, and I'll link for you to see if you'd like. So what does connection look like if you have a more avoidant style? Well, during connection, you might notice yourself accommodating, problem solving, or being able to connect when everything is going smoothly. So when no one is challenging you to think, be, or behave differently, or no one is asking anything of you that you aren't prepared to offer or give. Because if someone's pointing out something they want you to change, it feels threatening. However, when things get heated, you may start to fawn, which means saying or doing whatever you believe will appease or get the person to stop or lay off. You also may notice your go-to is, again, to problem solve rather than to get more curious about what the upset person is going through, and even find emotionally empathizing difficult. Just because it's not in your wheelhouse, it's likely a skill you haven't been intentional about and probably didn't get from your own parents or caregivers. What ends up happening is you skip right over the other person's emotional experience, which doesn't allow for meaningful connection. Rather, you just want to make the whole thing go away as quickly as possible because the core belief is that you're defective, which you don't want to believe. So you're trying to correct that. So during conflict, you might be feeling like you receive an error message, sort of a danger, danger. You go blank like a deer in headlights, or your brain's kind of short circuiting. Even connection can activate a similar response. There's something that feels risky about it, likely related to a history with little to no verbal and physical affection or frequent criticisms, ignoring, sending you off to deal with big feelings on your own. During connection, while engaging in conflict, you may notice your brain glomming onto something that's super random, kind of repeatedly going off in your brain like a brain pacifier. Maybe a song or a phrase going over and over in your head, and the person in front of you will begin to fade into the background, kind of like one of those adults in the Charlie Brown cartoon, sort of like wah, 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 right? Which confuses and even affects the anxious person even more that you're with, and they're likely to amp up, thereby making you want to pull away even more. So it's kind of this snowball effect. This is similar to what happens for individuals with inattentive ADHD or someone who might be on the autism spectrum. It's a mechanism. So you may look calm and on the outside or flat, but you're actually distressed internally during both conflict and connection. What's happening in a moment like this is that your nervous system is withdrawing due to the flight response or shutting down due to a freeze response. And it happens very quickly. And it has to do with your nervous system. You might go into fight, which is being defensive. What you're likely trying to defend is, again, I'm not defective, I'm not inadequate, or I'm not incompetent. So when in fight mode, you might say things like, I'm not talking about this, or you might just walk away, storm off, like I'm out of here. You may even just change the subject completely, make a joke, or attempt to solve the problem right away, just to frantically get the other person to shift away from what feels like a negative experience. You might even flip the script to Give the attention to the other person by saying things like, "What about you?" This is to sidestep your own felt sense of inadequacy. Now, if you're in freeze mode, you're likely to go quiet, or if you do speak, it may sound very robotic with a sort of automatic script that doesn't really require your mind to be in the game, in relationship. It's something familiar that you might say when you're totally checked out, like, okay, you're right. Something like that, something that's easy to get you off the hook. You likely look expressionless or as though you're not listening at all, as it's difficult to take in information while you're in the state of freeze. You might say things that don't fit the situation or even repeat yourself instead of really responding to what's happening in the moment. You may blurt out things that are obviously not true, like, "I didn't do that," or "say that," or "I did do the dishes," when clearly you didn't. It's a knee-jerk reaction to a fear of being incompetent or feeling inadequate, which is popping up in the moment and likely deeply rooted to core beliefs internalized very early on in life. So your brain just clicks right over to those statements. You also might block connection by making it about the other person to get the attention off of you by saying things like, "I just can't win with you," or "You're never satisfied." These statements are defending your core fear that you are part of the problem or maybe even not enough. The idea is believing the other person has too high of standards, therefore you can't possibly be the problem. This happens because you might be feeling overwhelmed, hopeless, helpless, because you're hearing that you're not enough or defective in some way. So it's a very sophisticated defense response. The difference between you and the narcissist or gaslighter is you are responding to a stress response, and you don't get enjoyment out of blaming the other person. And that's what the other person often doesn't understand and may confuse you with a narcissist. So once you're regulated, you drop those defenses. And if you're in fawn, you might go into pleasing mode, might even placate or say things like, you're right, or even start to accommodate by immediately doing all the dishes or something like that. It's pleasing behavior just to be off the hook for being in that connection that's uncomfortable or conflict that's uncomfortable. You may even come across as cool, calm, and collected on the surface, but are actually so dysregulated that you're unable to engage in meaningful connection. Even the things I'm saying right now might be difficult to hear. Your core beliefs tend to be, I'm defective, inadequate, or not enough. Next week, we'll get into disorganized attachment, which is a combination of the two that's very nuanced. If you want to know more about how to develop a secure attachment, check out my video on secure attachment styles. See you soon.